Okay, this one's a bit of a test. Let's just see what I've got on the way to this space I've been speaking about. So I've utilised these captured practices, idealism, empiricism, these isms. You might want to call them ideologies, but then that's an idealism to do that. So I just point out that these short versions of total philosophies, though they'll have a strong ideas component, they're not necessarily ideology. They're not necessarily, I think I've pointed out, bound up with a universal position on truth. You could do philosophy without being all-encompassing. Anyway, from isms, we understand that's a shortcut, but because there's so many of these shortcuts, you've kind of got to get them in check or bring them into check. So I just point out for the ones that I've used so far, so idealism, realism, nominalism, and from there touching on this metaphysics, ontology relationship, utilising idealism, realism and nominalism. I just wanted to kind of note what I had added there. That is, I've elaborated on nominalism, and certainly the context is for elaboration on nihilism, but I've noted also subjectivism. So that's it so far. Probably objectivism and positivism are relevant. If you're getting a sense of solipsism from subjectivism, that is a focus on the subject, the human subject. So really that focus has been around since Kant, and it gets a better expression, within a couple of decades by Kierkegaard, who's taking the existential route out of the religion of the day, if you like, the Christianity of the day in the West at least. And you've got the other philosophers, the Kants and Hegels, they're taking a metaphysical route, that they double down on metaphysics, really. So just expanding on my short list of isms, I've got to get a better word for it, but from there I think I'll just have to start with the particular kind of nominalism. So the nominalism I'm using, that is just noting things and words. That's the simple principle of the nominalists, is they just nominate straightforward things and note that words seem to be this particular thing that gets used. So they're a special kind of a thing. But I pointed out in the last video that they're not a pair under nominalism. So specifically for nominalism, what I'm doing is conceptualism. So that is taking that nominalist position quite seriously and taking a concept and unpacking that concept, but aligning it or assigning it in a particular relationship with another concept that appears to be a relationship that we can utilise in a practical sense of applying philosophy. So an example I will go further into will be concepts of freedom. I think I've touched on concepts of truth too, so they're probably two very good ones, because they're at the heart of subjectivity. And when we say at the heart of subjectivity, I'm probably saying that they carry a lot of weight with us, that we feel these things probably more than anything, and certainly more than how we present them by use of language. So two concepts there. So freedom, of course, is a huge one, and on one side of such a broad concept, we've got politics. So politics often bound up with the freedom of the day, the status quo. But then, another big concept, truth. What's the relationship between those two? Well, you're free to believe anything. So your truth, your preferred belief or truth is yours to have. Maybe not in some countries, and maybe not something that you can take into kind of the public arena and express with any great deal of support or agreement, anything like that. But when we get into subjectivity, we've got to acknowledge all the elements of subjectivity. So what happens is we consider things like, if you take truth or take freedom, you've then got to consider the subjective elements. And when I say subjective elements, I'm going to mean a lot, and we'll describe a lot around the intent of that use of that concept. So freedom is an example. Your desire for freedom, for example. So your intention towards freedom. Now that might be bound to your particular use of truth as you see it also. So there's no surprises there. Anyway, that's just an example really of a conceptualism. So a conceptualism that is taking concepts and saying, how do these things fit together, given that we're in the nominalist frame, and for what I'm doing here in the background, that nihilist frame of a values-free space. And I've noted a couple now of different kinds of sort of approaches to that space. So I'll continue.